You have in the past been very critical of Prime Minister Tsipras, also the Finance Minister, Mr. Varoufakis, suggesting they're not tackling this in the right way. What do you mean by that?
I think they lack experience and they came with completely unrealistic promises to their people. And of course, now they are in a situation when they understand they cannot fulfill the commitments taken. The euro area, it's 19 countries. So, of course, if there is a new government, that government has the right to come with its ideas. But it should also take in consideration that it's not alone and that some commitments were taken before that government unanimously. So he was asking for something that was completely unacceptable for the other members. We should not forget that there are countries that are poorer than Greece that have been lending money to Greece. So to propose at this stage some kind of cut of their debt, of course, will be certain to receive a no from their partners.
Yeah, and in many parts of Europe, you hear that argument that the problems in Greece were self-inflicted, and why should other members of the Eurozone then be forced to carry the can and to bail out Greece? And frankly, in many respects, they see it as throwing good money after bad.
I think we need to have a sense of compromise. Yes, the causes of the problems of Greece should be found in Greece itself, not outside. The other countries are lending money to Greece. So I think it's important to see solidarity from those who can help Greece, but also it is important to see responsibility for Greece itself. And the reality is that with this new government, those doubts came back again. There were efforts that have been taken. By the way, before this election, we were expecting already reasonable growth for Greece. And next year, the forecast of the European Commission was 3.5 growth. So that's quite positive. So, and it's really a pity, it is a shame, if after all those efforts, now, let's say, Greece dies in the beach. We have done everything. And so why cannot Greece follow the path, let's say, of Ireland, of Portugal? Those countries have implemented successfully adjustment programs. Spain also, when it comes to the bank system. So Greece can perfectly do as the others have done, or even some countries that were not in the euro area at that time, like Latvia, that made a big effort, and now confidence is back. So I think there is nothing regarding Greece that prevents them to be successful, except sometimes bad politics. And those bad politics, in fact, created a lot of problems for the Greek situation.
There are more and more voices suggesting that Greece leaving the Eurozone wouldn't actually be as bad as many had initially feared. In fact, George Soros saying now it's a 50-50 chance that Greece will leave the Eurozone. Do you think we're now down to that stage that it is looking increasingly likely that Greece will leave?
Yes, paradoxically, yes. You know, some years ago, for instance, I remember, because myself and the European Commission, we have done everything to avoid Grexit. And at that time, let's be honest, most analysts were considering the possibility of Grexit as 90% or more. At that time, everybody was saying that Greece will leave the euro even before the end of 2012, 2013. But at that moment, we have done everything to avoid that, not only because of Greece, but also because of the contagion effects on others. I think it would have been dramatic for all the euro area if that Grexit had happened, let's say, in 2012. Now, the markets are much more confident about the other countries, the so-called periphery. So I believe that today there will be not the same kind of problem if there was a Grexit. By the way, most of the debt is public debt, so it will not have real big effects in, let's say, the financial system through the banks, because that debt is mainly taken by governments or the ECB or some part of it by the IMF. But, of course, I think it will be negative, because if one country leaves the euro, it's hard to continue to speak about the European Monetary Union. The very idea of union will be put in question, and it sets a precedent. It breaks a taboo. So I continue to think that it's negative for all the euro area if Greece leaves the euro, but at the same time also, it will be negative for the euro area that to accommodate the demands of a new government, the euro area forgets all its commitments and does not respect, of course, all its policies. So it's a question of judgment. How far should we go to accept to accommodate some Greek concerns? That's why I believe, with wisdom, a solution can be found. But I think the ball today is basically on Greece's court.
Now, amid all the talk of Greece potentially leaving the Eurozone, there is also the potential threat of a UK referendum on continued membership of the EU. I know you've spoken about the UK Prime Minister David Cameron's attempts to renegotiate that relationship. You said that's very risky. But frankly, given a lot of the anti-EU sentiment we're seeing in the UK right now, does he really have a choice?
I think for all of us in Europe, it will be really a defeat if Britain would leave. Britain is a very important European country, one of the most important countries in the world, in fact. So the image of Europe will certainly be affected if Britain leaves the European Union. Having said that, I also believe, it's of course for the British people to decide, but I also believe that Britain would lose a lot if leaves the European Union, if leaves the European Union, because today in this globalization world of the 21st century, it's quite obvious that with giants such our American friends or China, countries that have 60 or 70 or million people, they cannot speak at the same level. They don't have the same leverage. So we have to use our countries. They have to use the leverage of the European Union, of our dimension. The European Union is the first trade bloc in the world. We have to use our common leverage to count in the world. If not, there is a risk that our countries become more and more irrelevant globally in geopolitical and geoeconomic terms. So that's why I hope that at the end a solution is going to be found. And I wish it very sincerely, not only for the European Union, but also for the world, because we need a strong European Union in this very unpredictable world.
Now, let's turn our attention to your 10 years in the top job in Europe. You were there in some of the most tumultuous times of the European Union. What was it like to be at the centre of that storm?
Oh, look, it was, in fact, a very challenging experience, and I'm very proud of the fact that we were able to resist to all those that were predicting the worst. Let's not forget that 2 years ago, most people were predicting the implosion of the euro. Not only Brexit, but the implosion of the euro. They were saying that Europe was now condemned to irrelevance. By the way, today this is not what we see. We see that recovery is coming to Europe. We are going to have not spectacular growth, but sustainable growth, I think. Moderate growth, but sustainable growth. And in fact, I see that other parts of the world that were sometimes ago trying to give us lessons, they have problems that are certainly not less important than the ones we had. So Europe has shown its resilience, and this is remarkable. And I want to tell you now that I'm no longer in office, so my level of sincerity is increasing day by day. I can tell you that I really am confident in the resilience of the European Union.